For years, my parents told everyone they risked everything to fund my startup, even though they refused to sign a single form. At the acquisition dinner, the buyer asked to meet my first investor. I stood up, walked past my parents, and introduced my retired high school teacher. I need to get this off my chest because if I don't, I'm going to lose it at Thanksgiving, and my girlfriend says I should process it in a healthy way instead of letting it eat me alive for another year. She's probably right. She usually is. My name's Victor. I'm 31. I started a logistics software company called Routecast about 7 years ago, and 3 weeks from now, a publicly traded company is acquiring us for a number that still doesn't feel real when I say it out loud. I should be on top of the world, and mostly I am. But there's this thing with my parents that's been building for years, and I think the acquisition dinner is where it finally comes to a head. Let me back up. I grew up in Albuquerque. My dad, Martin, worked for the Postal Service for 28 years. My mom, Diana, runs the cafeteria at an elementary school. Good people, in a lot of ways. We weren't poor, but we were the kind of family where the thermostat had a padlock on it and new shoes happened once a year in August. My older sister, Elena, got the attention. She was social, she was pretty, she did pageants in middle school that my parents somehow always found money for. I was the quiet kid who took apart the family computer and put it back together. I don't say that to complain. I say it because it's important context for what comes later. I studied computer science at UNM. Scholarships and a part-time job at a print shop covered most of it. Junior year of high school, I took an entrepreneurship elective taught by a guy named Mr. Alderman. Gerald Alderman, 60-something, reading glasses on a chain, drove a 2009 Camry that he was unreasonably proud of. He was the first adult who ever looked at one of my project proposals and said, "This is actually good. You should keep going." He stayed in touch after I graduated. Not in a pushy way, just the occasional email, a forwarded article about a startup that had done something interesting, a how's school going text around finals. I didn't realize how rare that was at the time. After college, I worked at a logistics company for 2 years doing route optimization for delivery fleets. The software they used was garbage. I kept a notebook of every feature I would build if I could start from scratch. By 2018, I had a working prototype and a business plan. What I didn't have was money. Here's where my parents come in. I needed $15,000 to lease server space and hire a part-time contractor to help me build the beta. I had about $6,000 saved. I applied for an SBA microloan, but because I had no credit history and no collateral, the lender said I needed a co-signer. I asked my parents. I sat at their kitchen table with a printed business plan, financial projections, and a repayment schedule. I'd practiced the pitch in my car for 3 days. My dad listened for about 4 minutes, then held up his hand. "Vic, I'm not putting my name on your little computer thing." That's a direct quote. I remember it because I went home and wrote it down. My mom didn't say no. She never does. She just said, "Your father knows about money, honey. Don't put him in a difficult position," which is her way of saying no while making it your fault for asking. I want to be clear. They were within their rights to refuse. It's their credit, their risk. I wasn't owed that signature. What I was owed was honesty about it, which is where this story goes sideways. The loan fell through. I was about to lose the server lease. I told Mr. Alderman about it during one of our coffee catch-ups, not asking for anything, just venting. He listened, asked a few questions about the business model, and then said, "What if I wrote you a check?" I said absolutely not. He was retired. He was living on a teacher's pension and whatever he'd saved. He said, "Victor, I've been putting money into a savings account for 20 years that earns less interest than a parking meter. Let me do something useful with $4,000. He wrote me a check for $4,000 from his personal account. I deposited it, covered the lease, and hired the contractor for 2 months of part-time work. That was the seed. That was everything. I insisted on giving him a small equity stake. He tried to refuse. I told him it was non-negotiable. He laughed and said, "Fine, but I'm not wearing a suit to any meetings." Routecast launched its beta in early 2019. By late 2019, we had 11 paying clients. By 2021, we had 60. I took on a small round of angel investment, hired a real team, moved into an office. The company grew. Not Silicon Valley rocket ship growth, but steady, profitable, boring growth. The kind where you actually make money. And somewhere in that timeline, my parents started telling people they funded it. I don't know exactly when it started. My sister Elena mentioned it first, casually, at a family barbecue in 2021. She said, "Dad was telling Pastor Jim about how he invested in your company. I almost choked on my burger." "He what?" "Yeah, he said you came to them with a business plan and they believed in you when nobody else did." She said it like it was sweet, like she was proud of them. I didn't correct her. I should have, but the company was growing. I was working 80-hour weeks, and I just didn't have the energy for that fight. It got worse. My mom started posting on Facebook. I don't use Facebook much, but Priya, my girlfriend, showed me a post Diana made in 2022. It said, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, "So proud of our son Victor. Watching him build his dream from our kitchen table to a real company has been the greatest joy of our lives. When we decided to invest in his vision, people thought we were crazy, but we knew our boy had something special. From our kitchen table, I built the prototype in a studio apartment that smelled like carpet glue. They never saw it. I let it go. I kept letting it go. Priya kept telling me it was going to blow up eventually, and I kept saying it didn't matter because the people who actually mattered knew the truth. Then 3 months ago, Transnational Logistics made an acquisition offer. James Whitfield, their CEO, flew out to Albuquerque personally. We negotiated for 6 weeks. The deal closed, and as part of the closing, Transnational's PR team started working on the announcement. That's when I got a call from their PR coordinator, a woman named Stacy. Very friendly, very organized. She said she was putting together background material for the press release and the acquisition dinner, and she wanted to confirm something. "Your father mentioned that your parents provided the initial seed funding for Routecast. Can you confirm the amount?" I sat there for about 5 seconds, which is a long time to be silent on a phone call. "Who told you that?" "Your father, Martin. He reached out to our general inbox last week and said he wanted to make sure the family's role was properly credited. He was very detailed. He said they risked their retirement savings to fund your first year of operations." My dad had found the PR firm's contact information on his own and emailed them with a story about risking their retirement savings. I told Stacy I'd get back to her. Then I hung up and stared at the wall for a while. Priya came home and found me sitting on the couch in the dark. She asked what happened. I told her. She sat down next to me and said, very quietly, "So what are you going to do?" I didn't know yet, but I knew something had changed. My dad hadn't just been telling stories to impress people at church anymore. He'd contacted a professional PR firm handling a corporate acquisition and fed them fabricated information. That's not embellishment. That's something else entirely. And the acquisition dinner was 3 weeks away. The next morning, I did what I always do when I need to think. I drove to the office early, made coffee nobody else would drink because I make it too strong, and opened a spreadsheet. I know that sounds weird, but I'm a data guy. When something is bothering me, I organize information until the pattern becomes obvious. I started a timeline. Every instance I could remember or document of my parents claiming credit for Routecast. Elena's comment at the barbecue in 2021. My mom's Facebook post in 2022. A Christmas dinner in 2023 where my dad told my Uncle Ray, in front of me, that he'd put up the seed money when Victor was just a kid with a dream. I'd been standing right there holding a plate of tamales and said nothing. There were more. A lot more. Priya helped me remember some I'd blocked out. Apparently, at Elena's birthday party last year, my mom told Priya's mother that they'd remortgaged the house to fund my company. Priya's mom had been impressed. Priya had been furious, but didn't want to cause a scene. By the time I finished the spreadsheet, I had 14 separate documented instances over 3 years. 14 times my parents had told someone, in some variation, that they had financially backed Routecast. The actual number they contributed was 0. Not a dollar. Not a cent. They wouldn't even sign a form. I called my CPA, a woman named Linda who's been handling the company's books since 2020. I told her I needed a complete funding history. Every dollar that had ever come into Routecast, where it came from, when it arrived, and what documentation supported it. She said she could have it ready in 2 days. Then I called my lawyer, not the corporate attorney handling the acquisition. My personal attorney, David, who I'd hired 2 years earlier for estate planning. I told him what my dad had done with the PR firm. David was quiet for a second and then said, "Has this affected any business dealings? Has anyone made decisions based on this false information?" I don't think so. Not yet. The PR release could change that. If Transnational publishes that your parents provided seed funding, and it's not true, that's a problem. For the acquisition, for your credibility, for everyone. I knew that. That's why I was calling. What do you want to do? David asked. I want to make sure the truth is what gets published, and I want to handle it without turning my family into a headline. He told me to get him the documentation and he'd advise from there. I didn't call my parents. Not yet. I needed to understand the full scope of what my dad had told the PR firm before I reacted. So I called Stacy back and asked her to forward me the email my father had sent. She did. I read it on my phone while sitting in my car in the office parking lot. It was 3 paragraphs. My dad has never been a great writer, but he'd clearly worked on this. He described how I'd come to them with nothing but a dream and a laptop, how they'd discussed it for weeks and decided to take the risk, how they'd liquidated a portion of their retirement savings to give me $20,000 in startup capital. He described watching me work from their kitchen table. He described my mom bringing me coffee late at night while I coded. None of this happened. The kitchen table thing especially got to me. I think my dad genuinely believes some version of this story at this point. He's told it so many times that the lie has calcified into something he thinks is memory. My mom bringing me coffee while I coded. That's a beautiful image. It just isn't real. I sat in the car for a long time. Then I drove to my parents' house. My mom answered the door. She seemed surprised to see me on a Tuesday morning. I told her I wanted to talk to both of them. She called my dad from the garage, where he was organizing his fishing tackle, which is what he does with about 60% of his retirement. We sat at the kitchen table, the famous kitchen table. I got a call from the PR firm handling the acquisition. I said, my dad's face did this thing where it went very still. Not guilty, exactly. More like bracing. They said you contacted them. I just wanted to make sure they had the full picture, he said. The full picture being that you and Mom invested $20,000 in Routecast. My mom looked at my dad. He didn't look at her. We supported you, he said. We believed in you from the beginning. Dad, you didn't give me any money. It's not always about money, Vic. You told a PR firm that you liquidated part of your retirement savings to give me $20,000. That is specifically about money. Money that you didn't give me. He shifted in his chair. We were there for you emotionally. We gave you a foundation. That's worth something. I agree. But that's not what you told them. My mom finally spoke. Victor, your father is proud of you. Is it really so terrible that he wants people to know he believed in you? He didn't believe in me. He refused to co-sign a loan. That's the opposite of believing in someone. The room got very quiet. My dad's jaw tightened. I could see him cycling through responses, trying to find the one that would make this go away without him having to admit anything. That was different, he said. That was a bank loan. That's serious. You were just a kid with an idea. I was 24 with a degree and a business plan. Same thing. I looked at my mom. She was studying the table. Her hands were folded in that way she does when she wants a conversation to end. I need you to understand something, I said. The acquisition dinner is in 2.5 weeks. There will be press. There will be executives from Transnational. There will be people who do due diligence for a living. If the story you've been telling doesn't match the financial records, and it doesn't, it's not going to be a family embarrassment. It's going to be a business problem. My dad leaned forward. So what? You're going to tell everyone your parents did nothing? You did nothing. Financially. That's a fact. I can't believe you, he said. After everything we've done. I didn't take the bait. I stood up. I'm not trying to humiliate you. I'm trying to fix a problem you created. The PR firm needs accurate information. I'll make sure they get it. My mom walked me to the door. In the hallway, away from my dad, she grabbed my arm and said, Victor, please don't do this to him. He just wants to feel like he was part of it. He could have been part of it. I asked. I drove back to the office. That conversation should have been the hard part. It wasn't. Because 2 days later, Elena called me. Hey, so Dad says you're trying to cut them out of the acquisition story. I told him the PR firm needs accurate information. Vic, come on. They're your parents. Does it really matter who technically gave you the money? It matters when Dad contacts a PR firm with a fabricated number, yeah. She sighed. The sigh that means I'm being difficult and she's being reasonable. He told me he's writing a speech for the dinner. He wants to talk about the family's journey. I think it would mean a lot to him. I stopped walking. He's writing a speech? Yeah. He's been working on it for a week. Mom said he's really nervous about it. He wants to do a good job. My father, who told a PR firm he'd invested $20,000 he never invested, was now planning to stand up at a corporate acquisition dinner in front of the buyer, the board, and the press, and deliver a speech about his role in founding my company. Elena, who told him he could give a speech? Nobody told him. He just assumed, I guess. He said the buyer would probably want to hear from the family. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Priya. He's writing a speech, I said. Of course he is, she said. He's told the extended family they're being honored as founding investors. Victor, yeah, you have to do something. She was right. The dinner was in 2.5 weeks, and my father was rehearsing a speech that was built entirely on a lie he'd told so many times he'd forgotten it was one. And now the whole family was expecting a moment. A public, recorded, press-covered moment. I opened my laptop and started thinking about what that dinner actually needed to look like. The first thing I did was call Linda, my CPA. She'd finished the funding history I requested. It was clean, thorough, and completely damning if you were a Rojas who claimed to have invested in Routecast. Every dollar was accounted for. My personal savings from the print shop and the logistics job. Mr. Alderman's $4,000 check in 2018. A $40,000 angel round from 2 local investors in 2020. Revenue reinvestment from 2021 onward. The cap table showed 4 names. Mine, Alderman's, and the 2 angel investors. Martin and Diana Rojas appeared nowhere. Not as investors, not as lenders, not as gift givers, not as anything. Is there any scenario where someone could argue informal family contributions? I asked Linda. She almost laughed. Victor, I've been doing your books for 6 years. There is no record of any Rojas family member contributing any amount at any time. If your parents had given you cash in a shoebox, you'd still need to show where it entered the business. There's nothing. Good. Can you prepare a summary document? Clean, professional, something I could hand to an attorney or a PR team. I'll have it to you Friday. Next, I dealt with the PR situation. I called Stacy directly and told her, as diplomatically as I could, that my father's email contained inaccurate information. I said the actual seed funding came from personal savings and a personal loan from a mentor, and that I'd provide documentation to support this. She was professional about it. She said they always verify financial claims before publication. She also said, without prompting, that it happens more often than you'd think. That handled the external risk. The PR release would be accurate, but it didn't handle the dinner. James Whitfield had planned the acquisition dinner as a semi-formal celebration. 40 people, the Routecast team, Transnational's leadership, some board members, and a handful of guests the founder wanted to invite. James had told me specifically, during one of our last negotiation meetings, invite whoever mattered. The people who helped you build this. I like knowing who's behind the companies I buy. I'd already added my parents and Elena to the guest list weeks earlier, before any of this blew up. Removing them would cause a family war I didn't have the bandwidth for. And honestly, they're my family. I didn't want to exclude them. I wanted them to be there. I just didn't want them to be there as something they weren't. So I made 2 decisions. First, I called Mr. Alderman. I hadn't told him about the acquisition yet. We still had coffee every couple of months. He'd followed the company's growth with this quiet pride that never felt like it was about him, even though he had skin in the game. Whenever Routecast got a new client or hit a milestone, he'd send a 1-line text. Something like, saw the news. Camry's still running, by the way. That was his humor. I met him at our usual spot, a diner near the university called the Loading Dock. He was already there, reading a book about the Dust Bowl, wearing a flannel shirt and those reading glasses on the chain. I have some news, I said. You're engaged. No. Well, not yet. Priya would tell you before I would. Transnational Logistics is acquiring Routecast. He set the book down slowly. Acquiring. Yes. For money. For a significant amount of money, yeah. He was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up his coffee mug, took a sip, and said, Does this mean I have to start dressing better? I told him about the dinner. I told him I wanted him there, at the head table. He tried to deflect. He said he was just a retired teacher who wrote a check once. I told him that check was the reason any of this existed. He got a little emotional, which for Mr. Alderman means he took off his glasses and cleaned them for an unusually long time. I did not tell him about the equity stake's current value. Not yet. I wanted that to happen at the dinner, with Priya and the people who actually knew the real story present. He deserved a moment, not a heads up. Second decision. I needed to deal with my father's speech. I thought about this for 3 days. I talked to Priya, I talked to David, my attorney. I even talked to my buddy Marcus, who's known my family since high school and has a talent for cutting through nonsense. Marcus said, Your dad is going to get up at that dinner and tell a room full of executives that he funded your company. In front of the guy who just bought it. In front of people who've reviewed your financial records. Yeah. And you want to stop this without destroying him. If possible. Marcus shook his head. Your dad's going to destroy himself, Vic. You're just deciding whether it happens publicly or privately. He was right. But I still didn't want a scene. Not at the dinner. Not in front of my team, who'd worked insanely hard to get here. They deserved a celebration, not a family intervention. So I went to see my parents again. This time on a Saturday, when my dad was usually in a better mood. I brought kolaches from the bakery he likes, which is the Rojas family equivalent of a white flag. We sat in the living room. I kept it simple. Dad, the dinner isn't going to have family speeches. It's a corporate event. Transnational is running the program. There's a specific agenda. This was half true. Transnational was running the program, and there was an agenda. But James had told me I could include whatever I wanted in the founders segment. I just wasn't giving that slot to my dad. He looked deflated. I just wanted to say a few words. I know, and I appreciate that. But this isn't the venue. My mom jumped in. Can't you ask them? Just 5 minutes. Your father's been practicing. It's not my event to change. I'm sorry. My dad stared at the kolache in his hand like it had personally offended him. Then he said, you know, when Elena graduated cosmetology school, we threw her a party. 60 people. I gave a speech. Nobody told me I couldn't. That was a family party. This is a business acquisition. It's still your achievement. And I'll be there, and you'll be there. That's enough. He didn't agree, but he didn't push. My mom walked me out again. Same hallway, same arm grab. He's hurt, Victor. I know. He just wants to be part of your success. He is part of it, Mom. He's my dad. He's on the guest list. He's at the table. I'm not asking him to be invisible. I'm asking him to be honest about what his role actually was. She let go of my arm and didn't say anything. Over the next 2 weeks, I planned my part of the evening carefully. I coordinated with James Whitfield's team on the program. There would be remarks from James, then from me, then a toast. Simple. During my remarks, James had mentioned casually that he'd love for me to introduce the person who first believed in the company. He does this at every acquisition, apparently. It's his thing. He thinks the origin story matters. The first investor, James had said during our prep call. The person who took the first risk. I always want to meet that person. You will, I said. In the background, I finalized everything with Linda and David. The funding summary, the canceled check from Alderman, the unsigned loan form, the text messages, the Facebook screenshots. All of it went into a folder on my laptop. Not because I planned to hand it out, but because if anyone ever questioned the real story after the dinner, the documentation existed. 2 days before the dinner, Elena called. She was excited. She'd bought a new dress. My parents had bought new clothes too. My dad had gotten a haircut. He's still upset about the speech, she said. But he's excited. He told Uncle Ray that the buyer might want to talk to him about the early days. I closed my eyes. Elena, the buyer doesn't know Dad. The buyer isn't going to ask Dad about anything. Well, that's what he told Uncle Ray. So my father, who'd been told there would be no family speeches, was now telling relatives that the buyer might want to interview him about the founding of the company. A company he didn't fund, didn't work for, and whose office he'd visited exactly twice. I made one more call. To Mr. Alderman. I'm sending a car for you Saturday evening. Wear whatever you want. I mean that. I was going to wear the flannel. Wear the flannel. The dinner was 2 days away. My parents thought they were walking into a celebration of the Rojas family's entrepreneurial sacrifice. My father believed he might be asked to share his story with the CEO of a publicly traded company. My mother had probably already rehearsed her humble, grateful expression. And in a quiet house across town, a retired teacher was ironing his best flannel shirt and wondering why his former student was making such a fuss about a dinner. The morning of the dinner, James Whitfield called me. Victor, quick question. My team ran the final cap table reconciliation. Standard stuff. But there's a name on there I want to make sure I'm pronouncing right. Gerald Alderman. Alderman. Like a city councilman. Got it. Small stake, early entry. That's your first investor. That's him. Looking forward to meeting him tonight. I always like the first check people. They're usually the most interesting. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and let the adrenaline settle. James had done his homework. He knew the cap table. He knew there was no Rojas money on it. If my dad tried to claim otherwise at the dinner, it wouldn't just be a family embarrassment. It would be a factual contradiction of audited financial records in front of the man who'd just written a very large check to buy my company. Priya was in the closet picking out earrings. She watched me through the mirror. "You okay?" James knows the cap table. He knows who the first investor is. So if your dad tries anything, it corrects itself. She came out and sat next to me. "What do you need tonight to feel good about this?" I thought about it. I need to tell the truth about who helped build this. And I need my dad to hear it without me having to point at him and say, "Not you." I don't want to humiliate him. I just want the right person to get the credit. Then do exactly that. The dinner was at a restaurant called Amara in the North Valley. Private dining room, long table, good lighting. Transnational had handled the setup. It was classy without being ostentatious, which I appreciated. There were about 40 people. My engineering team, our sales lead, our head of operations, Transnational's executive team, and a few board members. David, my attorney, came as a guest. Marcus was there. And at the table near the front, my parents and Elena. My dad was wearing a sport coat I'd never seen before. Navy blue, too tight in the shoulders. My mom had on a dress and the pearl necklace my grandmother left her. Elena looked great, as usual. They all seemed excited, almost giddy, and I felt a pang of something I didn't expect. Not guilt exactly. More like grief for the version of this evening they'd built in their heads. I'd arranged the seating carefully. My parents were at the main table, but not at the head. I was at the head, with Priya on one side and an empty chair on the other. Mr. Alderman hadn't arrived yet. My dad noticed the empty chair almost immediately. "Who's sitting there?" he asked, nodding toward it. "A guest. VIP. Something like that." He assumed it was James Whitfield, which was fine with me for the moment. James was actually seated at the other end of the table, already deep in conversation with my CTO about our routing algorithm. James is the kind of executive who actually understands the product he's buying. I respect that about him. The cocktail hour went smoothly. My team was happy. They deserved to be. These were people who'd worked nights and weekends for years, who'd believed in Routecast when it was 3 people in a strip mall office. I made a point of talking to every single one of them before dinner. My dad, meanwhile, was working the room. I watched him from across the space. He was introducing himself to transnational executives, shaking hands, smiling. At one point I heard him tell someone, "We're just so proud. We always knew Victor had it in him," which was technically not a lie. It was the other things he said that were lies. Around 7, the car I'd sent dropped off Mr. Alderman. He walked in wearing khaki pants, a brown belt, and the flannel shirt. He'd ironed it. You could see the crease lines. He had his reading glasses on the chain, and he looked around the room like he'd accidentally walked into someone else's event. I met him at the door. "Victor, this is too much," he said immediately. "It's exactly enough. Come on, you're sitting next to me." I walked him through the room, introducing him to a few people. My team knew who he was. I told them the story. A couple of the engineers shook his hand and thanked him, which seemed to genuinely confuse him. My dad watched this from the bar. I could see him tracking Mr. Alderman with a puzzled expression. He knew Alderman vaguely, the way you know the names of teachers your kid had a decade ago. He didn't understand why a retired high school teacher was being escorted to the head table at a corporate acquisition dinner. We sat down for dinner. The empty chair was now occupied by Mr. Alderman, who was studying the menu like it was a final exam. My dad was 4 seats away, with my mom and Elena between us. Dinner was good. Conversation flowed. James Whitfield gave his remarks first. He talked about Transnational's growth strategy, about why Routecast fit, about the caliber of the team he was acquiring. He was gracious and specific, which is a rare combination in executives. Then he turned to me. "Victor, before you say your piece, I want to ask you something I ask every founder at these dinners. Who was the first person who believed in this company? Not the first customer, not the first hire. The first person who put something on the line because they believed in you." The room got quiet. 40 people looking at me. I could feel my dad shift in his chair. From the corner of my eye, I saw him straighten up slightly, adjust his sport coat. My mom put her hand on his arm. Elena smiled. They thought this was their moment. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I looked at my parents for exactly 1 second. Then I turned to my right and put my hand on Mr. Alderman's shoulder. "James, I'd like you to meet Gerald Alderman. He was my high school business teacher. In 2018, when I couldn't get a loan and couldn't make the first server lease, He wrote me a personal check for $4,000 from his retirement savings. He's the reason this company exists. The room was perfectly still for about 2 beats. Then James Whitfield stood up, walked down the length of the table, and shook Mr. Alderman's hand. Mr. Alderman, it's a genuine pleasure. Alderman looked like he didn't know what to do with his hands. He half stood, shook James's hand, and said, I just wrote a check. He did all the work. James laughed. That's what the good ones always say. The room applauded. My team, the transnational people, David, Marcus, everyone except my parents. I looked at my dad. His face had gone through about 4 expressions in 3 seconds and landed on something I can only describe as a controlled blank. My mom's hand was still on his arm, but tighter now. Elena was looking between me and my parents like she was waiting for someone to explain what had just happened. Because what had just happened was that a room full of executives, in a recorded, semi-public event, had just learned that Victor Rojas's first investor was a retired high school teacher. Not his parents. A teacher. And the chair next to me, the VIP seat, the seat my dad had assumed was reserved for the buyer, was occupied by a 68-year-old man in an ironed flannel shirt who drove a 2009 Camry. My dad didn't make a scene. I'll give him that. He sat very still and ate his dinner and nodded politely when people spoke to him. My mom made small talk with Elena. Nobody explicitly said, so the parents didn't invest, but nobody needed to. The math was public now. After the main course, I had one more thing to do. I stood up again, and the room quieted. One more thing, Mr. Alderman. When you gave me that $4,000 in 2018, I insisted on giving you a small equity stake in the company. You tried to refuse. You said, and I quote, "Fine, but I'm not wearing a suit to any meetings." The room laughed. Alderman shook his head, smiling. With the acquisition, that equity stake has a current value. I paused. Alderman looked at me. The reading glasses were halfway down his nose. Your stake is worth $340,000. The room went absolutely silent. Not the polite silence of earlier. The kind of silence where people forget to breathe. Mr. Alderman stared at me. Then he took off his glasses, very slowly, and cleaned them on his flannel shirt. His hands were shaking slightly. Victor, he said. Just my name. That was all he could manage. I sat back down. Priya squeezed my hand under the table. Marcus was grinning like an idiot. My CTO had tears in her eyes, which she would absolutely deny later. And at the other end of the table, my father stood up quietly, walked out of the dining room, and didn't come back. My mom and Elena stayed through dessert. I'll give them credit for that. My mom's face had a fixed, pleasant expression that I recognized from every family event where something had gone wrong, and she was determined to pretend it hadn't. Elena kept glancing at the door my dad had walked through. After the dinner ended and guests started filtering out, my mom came up to me. She was holding her purse with both hands, which is her tell for when she's barely keeping it together. Your father's in the car. Okay. That was cruel, Victor. Mom, I introduced my actual first investor. That's not cruel. It's accurate. You humiliated him in front of all those people. He humiliated himself by telling those people something that wasn't true. For years, I just didn't repeat the lie. She stared at me. I could see her processing this, trying to find the angle where I was the one who'd done something wrong, because that's the framework she's operated in my entire life. Victor is being difficult. Victor is being ungrateful. Victor is causing problems by insisting on things that are technically true but emotionally inconvenient. Your father has done a lot for you, she said quietly. He has. He raised me. He taught me to drive. He showed me how to change a tire and how to file taxes. Those things matter. But he didn't fund my company, and he can't tell people he did. Elena appeared behind my mom. Her expression was harder to read. She wasn't angry exactly. She looked confused, like someone had rearranged the furniture in a room she'd walked through her whole life. Vic, did they really refuse to sign the loan? I looked at her. You didn't know that? No. Dad said the loan fell through because the bank changed the terms. The bank needed a co-signer. I asked Dad. He said no. I have the text message. I have the unsigned form. Elena looked at my mom. My mom looked at the floor. Why didn't you ever tell me? Elena asked. Because you were repeating the same story they were. I didn't think you'd believe me over them. She didn't say anything. She just stood there for a second, then squeezed my arm and walked toward the parking lot. My mom followed without another word. Priya and I drove home in mostly silence. She held my hand on the center console. About halfway home, she said, "Mr. Alderman cried in the parking lot." "What?" "After you told him about the equity. He went outside and Marcus found him sitting on a bench. He was crying. He kept saying, 'That boy gave me $340,000 for a $4,000 check.'" Marcus said Alderman blew his nose on the flannel. I had to pull over for a minute after that. Here's the thing about what happened next. I keep reading stories on here where the family blow-up happens, and then there's this clean resolution where everybody learns their lesson and apologizes and life goes on. That's not what happened. What happened was messy and slow and uncomfortable, which is how real families actually work. My dad didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. Not a call, not a text, not even a forwarded email about fishing lures, which is his primary mode of communication when he doesn't know what else to say. Complete silence. My mom acted as intermediary, calling me once a week to provide updates on how my father was doing, as if he were recovering from surgery rather than dealing with the consequences of lying about something for 3 years. During that silence, 2 things happened. First, the PR release went out. It was accurate. It described Routecast's founding, the personal savings and a mentor's early investment, the angel round, the growth trajectory, and the acquisition. My parents were not mentioned. Neither was Mr. Alderman, by name, because he'd asked to be left out of the press. "I don't need strangers knowing my business," he said, which was very Alderman. Second, Elena called me. Multiple times. She'd started asking questions. Genuine ones. She'd gone through her own memories and started noticing the gaps. "Did Mom really watch you code at the kitchen table?" "No." "Did they really remortgage the house?" "Absolutely not." She'd always suspected something was off, but had never had a reason to pull the thread. About a month after the dinner, she told me she'd confronted our parents, sat them down, and asked directly what they'd actually done for Routecast. My mom cried. My dad got defensive, then went quiet, then left the room. He kept saying, "I supported him in my own way," Elena said. And I told him, "That's fine, Dad. But that's not what you told Pastor Jim, or Uncle Ray, or the PR firm, or me." I honestly didn't expect Elena to be the one to do that. I underestimated her, and I told her so. 7 weeks after the dinner, my dad finally called me. It was a Sunday morning. I was making eggs. "Can I come by?" "Sure." He showed up alone. No mom as a buffer, no Elena as a translator. He sat at my kitchen counter and didn't say anything for a while. I poured him coffee because that's what you do. "I've been thinking about what happened," he said. I waited. I think I started telling people because I was embarrassed. "You asked me for help and I said no. And then you succeeded anyway. And every time someone asked about you, I felt like they were asking why I wasn't part of it. So I made up a reason I was." That was the most honest thing my father had ever said to me. I don't think I'd heard him admit to being embarrassed about anything in my 31 years of knowing him. "I shouldn't have contacted that PR firm," he said. "That was too far. I knew it was too far when I did it." "Yeah, it was. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me right now. I know that's not how this works." "It's not. But I appreciate you saying that." We drank coffee. He asked about the transition. Normal dad questions, not performative ones. Before he left, he said, "The teacher, Alderman." "Yeah. He really wrote you a check from his own money?" "For $1,000. From a savings account he'd had for 20 years. My dad was quiet for a moment. "That's a good man." "He is. Tell him I said so." I did. The next time I had coffee with Mr. Alderman, I told him my dad said he was a good man. Alderman sipped his coffee, looked at me over those reading glasses, and said, "Tell your father the Camry's still running." It's been about 4 months since the dinner. Here's where things stand. My dad hasn't told the story again. Not to Pastor Jim, not to Uncle Ray, not to anyone as far as I know. My mom took down the Facebook posts. I didn't ask her to. Elena told me she did it one night without saying anything about it. The relationship with my parents isn't fixed. It's just different. Quieter. We do Sunday dinners sometimes. My dad asks about work. My mom cooks too much food, which is the only love language she's ever been fully fluent in. Nobody talks about the dinner. Nobody talks about the investment story. It sits in the room like a piece of furniture everyone walks around. Elena and I are closer than we've ever been. She apologized for repeating the story without checking, which she didn't have to do, but it meant something. We text more now. She sends me photos of bad haircuts from the salon, and I send her screenshots of routing bugs. It's weird, but it works. Mr. Alderman used some of the money to finally replace the Camry. He bought a 2024 Camry. Same color. He said he didn't want to get reckless. He also donated $50,000 to the high school's business program, which now has a small computer lab named after him. He didn't want the naming thing, but the school insisted. He told me the plaque has a typo in it, and he's decided to leave it because it keeps people humble. Priya and I are good. She told me recently that the dinner was the moment she knew I'd figured out how to stop carrying my family's version of my story. I'm not sure she's entirely right, but I'm working on it. And Routecast is part of Transnational now. My role changed. I'm still running the product, but with more resources and less of the 60-hour weeks. James Whitfield and I have a good working relationship. He never asked me about my parents' claims. He didn't have to. The cap table said everything he needed to know. Last week, I got a text from my dad. It was a link to an article about a new fishing lure. No message, just the link. I sent back a thumbs up emoji. It's not a speech at a dinner, but it's honest. And it turns out honest is what I've been wanting from him this whole time.